So whose fancy Jeep is this?
Not mine.
Not yours?
Actually, it's mine.
So is this a TJ or an LJ or a YJ? What kind of Jeep is this? I've been trying to figure it out.
This is a Johnny Cash Jeep. It was a TJ that I bought when I was 18. About 2 years later, and I noticed right by the lower control arm mount, I had a hole in my frame because it came from Wisconsin. So the frame was rusty, the body was fine. I put a 2003 frame under it, but did some modifications to the skid plate to make all that work because, as you know, the pattern for a 2003 skid plate is different than a pattern for a 2001. Then I came to work for TNT in 2016. So from there I started gathering parts for the build. So the JK30 front, 44 rear. All I wanted was the front, the rear, and all the brakes off of everything. So I got it for $500 for both axles. It was a smoking deal. So that was off of 2009. So I have 2001, 2009, 2003. A transfer case from a 2011 JK. It was a 4-to-1, so it was from a Rubicon. So for $600 had 2,000 miles on it. So my gear ratio is 5/38 in the axle. The front axle is a Curry Rock Jock 44. Everything's JK width, 2003, 2009, 2011. And then it has a YJ fuel filler bezel. There you can say 95. All different parts of Jeeps. The half doors are technically from an 06.
So you have a YJ, a TJ, JK.
A JK, yeah. Our Guardian front bumper, a Factor 55 flat link E, a Warren M8000 winch, an off-road only sway bar. This is a dual rate sway bar. So when it's locked in, it is stiffer than factory. When it's unlocked, it's like a rack jack 4x4 anti-rock. Then I do our steering stretch kit. So the steering stretch kit moves the steering gearbox, which is a PSC. So it moves it forward 1.5 inches, up 1.5 inches, gives you 4 mounting holes instead of the typical 3, gives you a flat pitman arm or flat location for your pitman arm.
And why do you want that?
So we can stretch the vehicle. Okay. And it corrects a lot of the steering geometry. So instead of your pitman arm going like this, because it's at a funky angle, now it's flat. So your steering geometry stays the same pretty much throughout the whole entire steering arc compared to when you're here, you go up here, then you go down, then you go here, then you go down again, so it's moving it up and down. Front axle has a Summit Machine tie rod, so it's an aluminum tie rod from them. I use GM 1-ton steering, PSC ram, RCV axle shafts, Reed racing knuckles, ARB, and then Sierra gear and axle gears in it. This winter I did coilovers on it. So I have Radflow coilovers, 2-inch 12s in the front, and then 2-inch 10s in the rear. We'll look at that here in a minute. Our full long arm suspension. So my Jeep sits at 102-inch wheelbase. So I'm right there. We like to build them between 106, 100 to 106. That's kind of where we like to be when building Jeeps. I have our Phantom 3-inch Highline fenders. And then I have one of the last AEV Highline hoods.
Those are highly sought after.
Oh yeah.
So what grill is that? That's the TJ grill?
Yeah,
it's a TJ grill. And why do you have that hood? It's raised a little,
yeah,
right?
So Highline fenders move the whole entire fender up. Ours are specifically designed around the AEV Highline. There are other companies out there making them since AEV does not. But they aren't stamped steel. They're carbon fiber or fiberglass. There's a company down south, and then there's one out in California. They both make the Highline hoods.
And why do you want that?
So you can build your Jeep lower and have more travel and everything like that. So when I built this Jeep originally on coils and shocks, it sat at a 1-inch body and 2 inches of spring on 37s. So I had a belly height of like 17 and a half.
Oh.
Now I sit at about 19,
wow.
Give or take. So I raised it up a little bit, give me a little more travel. If you're doing ledges down in the south, you need that little bit more of a get your belly over. And mind you, our belly pan doesn't hang down that low. It only hangs down 1.25 inches, if that.
And when you say that, you mean our skid plates, the belt?
So with our long arm, it's a full belly pan system.
Okay.
So it's five pieces. So it's the 2 side plates that bolt up to the factory location. Then you have a transmission cross member that goes across that. You have and then you have the actual belly pan as well, the skid plate. Then you have your rear cross member for our dual triangulated rear suspension. And then as an option, you can get an engine skid. So I have an engine skid on mine because I wheel my Jeep. It's plain and simple. If you don't have an engine skid and you wheel your Jeep, you're not wheeling your Jeep that hard. Sorry.
Do you have lots of scrapes and dings under there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a Radflow coilover. This is our tower that welds to the frame. It comes with bump stop mounts. I happen to use just aluminum with a little bit of rubber on the bottom for my bump stop, but you can use air bumps. Fenders, Guardian sliders. I have our 37 stretch corners. So this is actually a 40-inch opening, stretched back roughly 4 inches, a little bit more than that. And our flares are all weld on. They're not a bolt on thing. We weld the flares on. They're designed for which wheel opening you have. And the reason we do that is they can take much more punishment than a bolt-on flare. A bolt-on flare will work on those bolts and everything. If you hit these, you can see where I've taken the other side's much worse. But I've literally put the weight of my Jeep on these and they don't move. Underneath, we have our Y-link up front, our track bar system, which I talked about in another video. Mine is longer. I moved it over to match the JK style steering because I have crossover steering. Comes back to our belly pan, engine skid, side plates, rear cross member, arms, and then from pretty much the back body mount here under, I whacked it, and then we built this whole back half kit for using this coilover. So this is a 10-inch travel coilover. I net 12.5 inches of travel. With our suspension being dual triangulated, we can essentially put the coilover mount right beside the lower control arm mount. So what that does is also moves the mounting point 7 inches forward of axle center line. So you get this, it's essentially like a trailing arm, so you get more travel out of it because it's farther away from axle center line. And we like to mount the coilovers on the front side of the axle. We feel they drive better, they ride better, the motion ratio is better on them. So that's why we run them on the front side compared to the back side. Most people put their coilovers right here. Well, what that does is when you're going down something that likes to unload, there's suspension geometry that goes in that and everything, but when you're going down something, I've seen it many times, that likes to unload there. Also, people run too big of a coilover, essentially. They'll think, oh, I need a 14-inch travel coilover there, but they're not actually getting 14 inches of travel out of it, and they'll have to limit it. They'll also run way low spring rates. So my spring rate is actually heavier than it probably needs to be. I've been playing with them. My spring rate is 275 over 350, and I'm probably gonna drop it down to a 250 over 325 maybe, or something like that, just to soften it up just a little bit. Trail ready wheels, Maxxis Trepadors. In my opinion, they're the best tire out there. These things stick to everything. They're tough. I mean, look at, this hit the sidewall and they're fine. The rear, that is part of the back half kit, the bumper, KC Cyclone lights, our rear tire carrier, which obviously you see I don't have a tire carrier on. A factory JK44, the Sport. We always use Sports instead of Rubicons.
Why?
And the reason for that is a Rubicon is more expensive if you're gonna buy it, and we're gonna rip everything out of the Rubicon.
Okay.
So our opinion, we don't like the lockers in the Rubicon. It's dumb to design a rear axle with shafts that are 2 different lengths, because in a Rubicon you have 2 different length axle shaft. This with the 35 spline, because these are 35 spline axle shafts, and then an ARB locker, it's the same axle shaft either side. Rad flows in the rear. The bump stops are all built into the back half kit. It's a Genrite stretch tank. I have our cage, part of our cage kit comes up and then ties into the factory. I will finish the cage here shortly. I'll get new seats as well, harnesses, because I've been wheeling harder and harder. I have a Dometic fridge freezer in here because snacks.
Ice cream?
Ice cream, yeah, at night runs. I do ice cream on night run. I have our inner brace here that braces the slider. So it's just makes it stronger. So when you're hitting on this,
and that's a part we sell.
yes, yep.
What's it called?
It's an inner slider brace, and it works with both the Adventure series and the Guardian series, the rock sliders. You can see the driver's side.
I was just looking
is
at
the
that.
side I use. I have an ARB twin air compressor that's mounted to our fenders. So instead of dragging out your air hose or whatever, I have 4 whips that are made out of 1/4-inch hose that connect to the Schrader valves on the tires, and then Schrader valves that I mounted on the body. And so I can air up all in one time and air down all at one time. And you don't have to carry around these long hoses that go around all 4 wheels and stuff like that. So it just makes it simple and easy. But yeah, that's about it. She's rough right now. When I get home after this wheeling season, it'll go in the shop. I will clean everything, wash everything, go through everything, go from there.
She's gonna like her spa day.
Yeah.
Spa weeks, months.